And then I will present to you during the next 45 minutes a case that indeed that very picture that symbolized the death of the vessel and arguably the death of the freight market could be also the very reason why I believe the freight market, just like James Bond, is a specialist in resurrection, right? I'm quite certain that most of you have seen James Bond, and he actually gets beaten time and again. But time and again, he comes back. Because in fact, if the freight market were dead, I would not be standing here, and for that matter, none of you would come to this conference. Because there is no international grain trade without shipping. So, with that in mind, let me just spend 30 seconds about what we do and about our distinguished panelists. I founded Seamind. We are a freight consulting firm based out of Singapore, and our business is freight. We consult, we provide market intelligence, we make sense out of that market intelligence for our clients, and we manage freight portfolios. And today, to help me out in the task, we have Captain Patnaik, who is the CEO of ISL, based here in Dubai, and he is intimately familiar with all the risks and opportunities that are characteristic for this region. And then we have Tamsin, who is the chief editor at Platts in Dubai, and she's going to share with us very exciting stories that have to do with the crude oil. And in a second, I'll make the case for many of you. I'm quite certain, based on my past experience, that many of you are not really deeply aware of how much impact the stories that affect the crude oil have to do with the freight. Then last but not least, we have Thomas Lisowski, who is my associate. And Thomas works with clients like you and consults them every day. And what he does is he helps them to manage those risks and opportunities. Okay, first question. And we put a bit of a reference to Burj Khalifa. Okay? Baltic Dry Index. That's the equivalent of the Dow Jones for the shipping markets. The index that the Brits effectively created back in 18th century, and it was standardized in 1990s. Okay? So if you look at the all-time high of Baltic Dry Index, which incidentally was in the May of 2008, and you look at that point, it was represented by the very top floor of Burj Khalifa. Where do you think we are today? Yes, and you have two lifelines as well. Call the friend. You call Thomas. I'll give you 9295 9535. Okay. 24th floor. Okay, 24th. Okay, so he's for 24th. Any other takers? Sure. Thinking. Take it. Okay, good question. So you're thinking we're in the basement. So actually whoever has put out these options probably was wrong. Okay, so he thinks we're in the basement. Sure. Less than 8th floor. Okay. 48th floor. Now let's pick on the crude oil specialist. Tamsin, what do you think?
I think about the 8th floor.
8th floor. And the correct answer is the 8th floor. 8th floor. You see? There you have it. That's Baltic Dry Index in the last 30 years or so. Okay?
A nice one.
I hope it beautifully shows what a dramatic market we're in, what tremendous risks we're facing, and what tremendous opportunities. I mean, look how boring is wheat. Was it? How did it change how has it changed over the last 12 months? What, like high 190 and maybe low 160, 15%? How boring is that? And the entire conference is committed to wheat. Come on. That's where the money can be made. Or, for that matter, lost. So let's just take a peek. So all-time high, almost 11,500. We witnessed all-time low just in February, 300. So we would have been, sir, on the 4th floor just in February. But since February, the index doubled. So we are today at 600. The index that represents the time charter values doubled. That's how dramatic, 3 months. Now, he was trading Capesize ships at $250,000 per day, and the very same Capesize ships, within 3-4 weeks after the Lehman shock, were trading at, any guesses? $1,500 per day. Now, you have to have a strong tummy for that. You have to believe something that arguably is greater than yourself to deal with that sort of volatility. But for you guys, the grain companies, the point you have to keep in mind is this. Over the long term, this market is not going to trade at $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. Something will happen. It is happening now. As Thomas will explain, it has to do with the very picture that we saw at the beginning. People start scrapping ships in big volumes, and young ships, because it no longer makes sense. Okay? Who knows who that gentleman is? He is out. Very good. So we got some crude oil experts here. Okay. Well, we remember because it was a very momentous moment in November 2014 when the prices went down to $80. And what do? Cut or pump? Well, he looked at the price cost of extraction of barrel and he says, well, I have a cost advantage. Of course, the sale people, we need to have them suffer. And he has been successful. Obviously, billions of dollars have been pulled out of the shale gas, and we know what happened with the prices. Where we are heading. Well, where we are heading with respect to the freight, or with respect to the time charters, needs to start off with a very basic supply-demand analysis. So for supply, we need to see what has happened and what is going on the supply. So Thomas, can I ask you to perhaps brief us? Do you have a mic, or you want to?
No, we
just so that
have a
you
mic.
can
It's okay.
guide them on this.
Yes, right. So in the summer of 2013, after various natural disasters had stopped almost coal and grain exports from Australia and also iron ore exports from Brazil, the Chinese government decided to start importing large quantities of all these commodities again, and that has really fired up the market in a way that many ship owners thought that this is a very good moment to start buying new ships because asset prices were low, the shipyard capacity was there, and this is what many people did. And these ships, as you can see, they have entered the market especially in the last year and are entering as we speak, because it usually takes around 2 years to build a ship from the point of ordering to until the ship hits the water, as we say. And these ships have come to the market, but unfortunately there is not sufficient cargoes around, as we will see on other slides that the Chinese demand has slowed down. But we can also see on these slides that the demolitions of the ships, which what Voytek mentioned earlier, that a ship normally after 20 years will be going out of service because it will be uneconomical and basically has served its purpose. So we are seeing, especially in the last year and this year, we are seeing big numbers of ship demolitions, which is a good thing, but the influx of the new ships is still contributing to overall fleet growth. So especially on that chart, you can see that the demolitions have been starting to rise after the crisis. When the market picked up in between in 2013 and 2014, owners were still keeping on to their ships because as long as the ship makes money, which is as long as you earn your operating expenses, it still makes sense to keep the asset. But with the influx of new ships, these old ships become less tradable, and that's why they were sent to mostly to beaches in South Asia, where they are literally torn apart by the people that we see on the picture. As you can see, the volume of scrapping in the first quarter of this year is almost the half of the total overall last year. So we expect that this year will be a fantastic year for ship demolitions, which is really what the market needs. As with the new buildings that were ordered 2 to 3 years ago, this is the only reason that can help the market to improve eventually, and for people to start breaking even and maybe make money. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Voytek. Yes, the crude story, the oil story in general, has been very interesting of late. That Saudi prince you just saw, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, he is the face of Saudi Arabian intergenerational regime change, and that's very important because he will probably, although he's only second in line to the throne, not first, but in all probability, if things go right for them, he may be the first of the grandchildren of the founder of Saudi Arabia, King Abdullah ibn Saud, to sit on the throne of the largest economy in the Middle East. So, what is he thinking now? A lot of what he is thinking seems to be influenced by one of his known right-hand men, and that is the new oil minister, just recently appointed, who is also the chairman of Saudi Aramco. His name is Khalid al-Falih. Now, Falih is an oil man. He has spent decades in the organization of Saudi Aramco, but recently he has grown very close to Prince Mohammed. He is probably his mentor in all things to do with oil and quite a lot of things to do with the economy in general. And what we're seeing now is really how his vision, combined with the prince's dynamism, and really a belief that Saudi Arabia needs change, and how those two are playing out.
Let's get on to it. Here are the 3 or 4 points I'd like you to address. Iran, what is your perspective as an operator, and what's your take on that in the context of how relevant that is for the grain buyer? Yemen, Qatar, piracy.
Thank you, Voytek, and good afternoon to all of you. Well, as you all know, that Iran has just opened up and the sanctions have been lifted, but as you know that still the primary sanction is still in place, the secondary sanction has been lifted, which means that US citizens and US banks are still not allowed to trade freely with Iran. As a result, you still have a problem with the currency, and as you know, shipping is a global business, international business. Most acceptable currency is US dollar. Hence, if US banks are not permitted to trade with Iran, you have a huge challenge there when it comes to receiving freight and paying your costs such as the charter hire, bunker price and all that. So that's a major challenge with respect to Iran. And also, as you know, that most of the Iranian entities pre-sanction days were part of the OFAC list, Office of Foreign Asset Control. So it's still very difficult to know at this stage how many of them have been lifted from that list and how many still exist. So it's again a major challenge, because that's one of the preconditions when you do business with Iran, is that you have to see that your counterparty is not a sanctioned entity.
With respect to performance risk and arrest, I think the key principle is know thy partner. Know thy partner. First and foremost, you need to know whether the guy with whom you do business, whether there is integrity. If the market shoots up, as it did in 2003, 2005, 2007, 2013, when the freights double, triple, whether he's going to perform the contract. So it's very important. Number 2, if integrity is not an issue, you still need to look into his financials and make sure that whoever your freight partner is will be out there when it comes to execution, because he might not be solvent. Thirdly, you need to make sure that you put in your contract proper structures that allow you to leave the contract if it turns out that either your partner or his supplier is insolvent, right? There's a number of quite simple steps, yet fundamentally important, that can reduce greatly your risks, okay? From the shipping cycle perspective, exactly at the time, it was the right time to sell, people started buying and ordering new ships. Fast forward five years, in 2013, so that was the story that Thomas was referring to. So you had pouring rains in Brazil, and you have Cyclone Oswald that ravaged Queensland, and that led to shortage in inventories for coal and iron ore in China in the summer of 2013. And all of a sudden, Chinese decided, okay, let's go in the market, flooded with orders, and what the Cape rates, Panamax rates tripled in the space of 2 months. And people wrongly thought, okay, that's a signal that the cycle has bottomed out and is recovering. And the misery was exacerbated because this is at the time when liquidity became very abundant in the US, and you have a lot of people said, hey, let's do some IPOs. And you had the flood of the second wave of ordering in the second half of 2013, and those ships hit the market last year and the year before, second half, okay?